Yeah, it's like,
May I read this 227 here? Because Wayne and I spend a lot of time talking about the last part of this. I'll just read it. Even when the North American continent will be stricken by the most terrible catastrophe which ever been recorded, evil military powers will wreak havoc with computerized and nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, whereby it will also happen that computerized weapons become independent and cannot be controlled any longer by human beings. Wayne, doesn't that sound familiar?
Well, that's AI right there.
yes. And Meier, we have something called Contact 251. Meier describes the things that people will be doing to themselves. It's not here. It's not here. Contact 251 is a separate thing which we have linked on my website. And they talk about all of the alterations. Oh, by the way, look at here, 253. This will be at the time that tremendous natural disasters will hit Italy and its people, causing severe hardship. At this time, Vesuvius could become active again.
What are we seeing now?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And more is coming. In the 1948 letter preceding this, by almost 40 years, when you just were on that, thing about tremendous, the most terrible catastrophe to strike, the North American continent, Svath, Meier's contact person at the time, foretells that in the future there will be 3 caldera that will break open. One in Italy. Italy is going to be destroyed to a large degree through these earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, and this caldera that will open. Parts of Italy are going to go into the ocean, as are parts of 5 other countries, unspecified. But the North America, they said, okay, Italy, the caldera will break open in Italy. Then in Northern Europe, there will be a sea of fire. Another caldera will break open. And in America. So I think that catastrophe could be, it's either like the New Madrid fault just ruptures and all that, or it's the caldera at Yellowstone that finally breaks open and just, causes tremendous damage. But they're saying, we're still going to have a crazy, this is why I worry for Trump. He's really wrong about stuff like the environment and healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah.
He does want to protect the country. Like the play Aaron said, he's a kind of chaotic and catastrophic person, but he's not a bad person. He really wants the best for the country, as Obama did too. But the people around him, the Secret Services, and you're telling me they're taking pictures of his kids. Look, he will get the message one way or another. And if you see policies starting to get hostile towards Russia, you know that we are stupid enough to bring forward the fulfillment of the Enoch prophecies, which in no uncertain terms is the utter destruction of the United States of America.
So I have a theory, Michael, on the caldera, and hear me out on this because it actually ties into it. We know that back in 2015 that the Russians were flying their backfire bombers. And one of the things that came out was that they were measuring what we now know was this intense new chamber of magma. And here's my thought. If a missile with a nuclear payload was hit in a particular vulnerable area of a geographical area, it would basically be like unzipping the seam, so to speak. That if you bring in a natural circumstance like a nuclear hit, that in itself would erupt what I think would be potentially this caldera in Yellowstone.
It could be. The thing is that would mean that there would be an incoming missile, and that would be already in a war process. When they speak about in here, because he spoke about the most terrible catastrophe to hit North American continent, they also talk about fire cylinders and hurricanes spreading across here. I think you're on it in this way. The fire cylinders are probably caused by weather weapons, by scalar weapons.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And the Russians have them. We have them. We've got HARP, which has done tremendous damage already to the world. We have in the militaries, of many countries, not only here. We have certifiably insane psychopathic lunatics, many of whom are waiting for or want to bring forward Armageddon and the second coming of Cheese Whiz or whatever. And all of this stuff, the human beings of Earth, the great mass, the billions of people, are vulnerable to the pathological actions of these people. The weapons industry is, it unrelentingly rolls on and on and on.
Would Fukushima play a role in that?
I have not seen it. They have not said it was anything other than a bad earthquake and, a tsunami. By the way, Japan is going to be hit again pretty hard. Part of Japan is going to go into the sea. Even Edgar Cayce had said that. Fukushima is an out-of-control tragedy that will affect the world for centuries because it is killing off life in the seas. It's killing off the food chain. It's in the air. Within days of Fukushima, Meier was already told that the Pleiaren had monitored nuclear radioactive particles in Northern Europe.
Yes.
And they told him this is a meltdown. Ultra super worst possible case scenario is what they called it. And of course, the poor Japanese are just running around saving face all day long. They're clueless. They don't know what to, and they want to move people back into the air. I mean,
they do, yeah.
Human beings, we are suicidally stupid. Suicidally stupid. And that suicidal stupidity, you talk about a John McCain, this is a parasitic life form that knows nothing but aggression and is hungry for power because he's a wannabe. He always wanted to have the power that the Bushes had. I know someone who worked with both the Bushes and McCain, CIA, et cetera, et cetera. He knows this firsthand. And this guy is just a failed creature who seeks destruction, and he's not alone. You've got the Pelosi's and the Schumers and the Clintons, and there are those clearly on the right and all, but it is these days it is the left that is doing the most damage and will provoke your question, the civil wars, foretold as early as 1981. And that is because of all this polarization, which is now only increasing, cultural, racial, religious.
And it's hit such a level of it's so destructive, Michael.
It is. It's just completely unnecessary. One question I have, though, from a Pleiadian perspective, what was their motive for even coming in contact with Billy, with us in general? And my second question is, have you ever met a Pleiadian yourself?
Second, I can tell you the answer, no, I have not. I can tell you I've gotten information from them, but I'll do that in a minute. The motive is this. This is a rather ancient mission, to use a term. It's not a mission in the religious sense. It's a mission in terms of a commitment of a vast number of people in highly advanced worlds who are connected to us, in some cases ancestrally. Some of the Pleiadian forefathers were some of the gods of our past, some of the earlier extraterrestrial powerful ones who came here, who interacted with primitive Earth humans, who participated in upgrading or co-creating new races or whatever. It's connected to that, but also in leading Earth humanity badly astray. And that is when the gods and the power-hungry extraterrestrials were here, how they did harm humanity through consciousness, through contributing to the formation of these religions, which have enslaved people for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And this does not condemn individual people who happen to believe in a given religion or other, including Muslims, because in the same way, and this Muslims, the Christians, Jews, Hindus, and all, there are people in every religion who truly are just peace-loving, people who want to do their thing, they want to worship, do what they want. We don't have to agree with it. The fanatics of religions, and they exist in all religions.
Yes, they do.
Talk about the Inquisition and the Crusades and all the rest. If people want to say, well, Christians, it's there. But it's the radical Islamists who are not truly Muslims. They are not Muslims. These are psychopathic killers who have corrupted the teaching, as the Quran is no longer, it isn't the true teaching of real Islam, which was a spiritual teaching. That got corrupted, as did the Old Testament and the New Testament, because they were, okay, I don't want to go too far afield in that.
No, but I'm right there in sync with you on this, because my view is this, as I have seen it in my lifetime, and you and I are about the same age, that I've not seen anything good come out of religion.
Yeah, not too much. In all fairness, every religion has some good teaching or elements in it. The problem is that it's all wrapped in corrupted lies, manipulations.
It's hijacked. The message is hijacked.
They're all hijacked. And if religions were only, and then you'd only need one religion, then you wouldn't need any. If it was simply do unto others as you'd have others do unto you, we wouldn't have all this grief. But
it's a wonderful philosophy to live by.
It's cause and effect.
Yes. The problem is that, as we well know, is that the ones who get in there and corrupt it, and listen, it's in all religions. I agree with you. But when we talk about the radical Islam, that mindset, people just have to go and study history. It's scary. It's very scary to see what happens.
Well, Billy in 1958 first published the warning about radical Islamist terrorism spreading worldwide. And he said, because this was initially so, it would be retribution for the Christian crusades of centuries ago. So then, and even some of the language that's used by some of the Islamists refers to the Crusades, the Crusaders, right? All this stuff. Yeah. Of course, now this has been made into, it's if you will, it's an excuse. It's covertly funded by elements of our own government and government of Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I mean, because it's money, it's weapons industry, it's control. There are parties that have these great crazy plans that what they're going to do is, bring all these religions against each other, then they're going to dominate through this after. The problem is that the prophecies tell us that up to 3/4 of the population of the world can and probably will be destroyed if we end up in this war with Russia. It will be uncontainable. And all these lunatics in our government that think that this is going to give them more power, they're going to be fried to a crisp along with everybody else. And I don't care if they're in deep bunkers. You're going to have earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Think about what happens when you're a couple hundred feet below the ground and then suddenly, oh gosh, it moves and everything's
everything.
And it couldn't happen to a better group of people. The ones that create all this grief and think that they're going to just set it in motion and then wait until the dust settles. To what? A radioactive world.
Yeah.
And these people have not been wrong on predictions. Prophecies, unfortunately, keep fulfilling because we're too stupid and greedy. For instance, everybody knows who Alex Jones is. And and he was very instrumental in getting Trump elected. It looks like, rallied everybody and did all this stuff, exposed a lot of the corruption and everything and violence on the left. And now he could be more useful because Alex Jones has received all of this information for years. Alex Jones and Matt Drudge. I've sent this information, documentation. Whenever something happens that corroborates the prophecies, I send it to them. They don't want to rock their own boat, their cash cow. Imagine that. A guy like Alex Jones who now knows the truth, and instead he's talking God's coming and Jesus and all this nonsense that ain't going to happen, and he sells vitamins. He's not a stupid man, and he's done a lot of good. If he had the real courage, if he had the real balls, not this fake macho, I'm going to go out and beat up leftists.
Yeah, I saw that.
If this guy had it really, he would say, okay, everybody, I'm about to become really unpopular with you because I'm going to tell you the real brutal truth. And actually, by telling you the truth, I'm doing more than I could even hope to do to possibly help prevent the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Here it is. There's a man in Switzerland. He's connected, goes way back to the earliest prophets, including the man we falsely called Jesus Christ, whose name was Emmanuel. And he works with a real live extraterrestrial race, as all the previous prophets did. They've been trying to warn us for eternity about what the heck we're about to plunge ourselves into, because we just can't get enough war and violence and conflict. Well, let's stop it. Let's not have info wars.
Exactly.
How about some info peace?
Do you think, Michael, that we are in that generation that where we're seeing the accumulation now of the seers of the past, and that through either through the natural occurrence of things that we have messed up, that we're possibly that generation, or do you think we're still a couple hundred years down the road?
Well, do you mean, are we the ones who are going to see all this stuff unfold?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I think, yeah.
Well, I may be a bit older than you, and your generation and the ones before, the earlier ones, meaning the younger generations, they are inheriting this mess.
They are.
Look, the Playaran told Meier as far back as 48, 75, and 2012, they're not projecting stuff beyond 2020, especially for America. They have said that the fate of America basically rests on what happens after Obama, who succeeds Obama, and what their policies will be.
Yeah.
You better hope and support the best for this crazy guy Trump, that he does not get pushed and swayed into more of this military industrial insanity, and that somebody wakes him up about stops this fracking and coal mining and the rest. Look, we could have about 85 to 90% of our energy provided by deep geothermal. It's being done in some places. It's got a little going on in California. Iceland uses it. They're developing in Switzerland. There is so much inexhaustible heat energy deep down in the earth that just coming up through shafts into turbines, you can generate more energy, more electricity until the cows come home and the lights go out. You don't need to keep on polluting this world because Shell and the rest of them can't get enough of it. Look, tomorrow you want to wake up as Shell deep geothermal? I'm all for it. I'll subscribe, because that means no more drilling in the oceans, drilling on Earth, precipitating these damn earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Meier was told as far back as 1976, that is what is going to increase the number and intensity, frequency, and magnitude of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and sinkholes. The Earth collapses in on itself. The fracking going on now, there's a guy online, Dutch Since, he does these earthquake reports. Guy's amazing with his accuracy. He shows the fracking going on, even right out here in the Southwest. It's mind-boggling how insane human beings are. How insane. And what Meier was told in 1948, which Dutch Since is just looking a little bit at, is the danger coming from all of the oceanic volcanoes that are going to blow, that are in the seas, as well as the Northwest earthquake and tsunami, as well as the eruption of Cumbre Vieja in La Palma in the Canary Islands. We've been warned.
Yes.
And people, of course, this is suppressed by the CIA. Of course, it's suppressed by the news media. You can't get it out into the mainstream. Of course not. We don't want to, lose our control by letting people know that we're really screwed unless we change our ways. Let's just make money while we can.
And I think that's the prevailing attitude. And that's the question I often think, have we just reached the point of no return in all of this? I think that Personally, my personal feeling is that we passed that tipping point some time ago.
That's why, like in the very beginning of the interview, and I said when we were speaking, maybe it wasn't recorded at that point, that now what the Plejaren have called for, what Meier is calling for, is the new spiritual teaching people. It's a call out to people to discover the spiritual teaching, to study it, to test it. There's nothing to believe. It's like if you want to study electronics or car repair, you get a manual and you read and you study and you test. And, well, if you put wire A to terminal B, how does this work? And this is the real peace symbol. We've been carrying the upside down peace symbol for 60 odd years or whatever, which is the symbol for death. The peace symbol is the symbol for death. This is the real and true peace symbol. It's ancient. So we have a meditation.
Well, we certainly blew that back in the 60s, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. We're running around. And, of course, a lot of peace demonstrations get violent. What is that?
Well, now I know why when you're invoking the spirit. Come on.
Just real quick, Michael, I had a question about, I want to go back to the Plejarens themselves. It's like,
anything you want.
I really want to know more about these people. Are they people that would say things like meditation? Would they have practices like that? Or are they, what are they like? Who are they? What are they?
Okay, they are also the descendants of an even far more ancient race called Lyrian, the people from the Lyra system. Their ancestors were gigantic space high-tech warriors on steroids. Star Trek and Star Wars is kind of a diluted version of what they really lived. I mean, these people, they enslaved planets, they destroyed planets, they had all of this amazing high-tech stuff. And so what happened was they've, over time, there were some migrations of their peoples. They had thousands of years of conflict in their own society. They had to have an intercession by actually one of the original incarnations of who Billy is. This is just so much. This stuff, just keep on going on it. It's pretty mind-boggling. They needed a prophet to come to their world. They needed spiritual teachers to bring the spiritual teaching to them. They had to settle down. They were warring amongst themselves. We have a whole blog about it where you can read their history on the same thing that you're on this blog of mine. It's mind-boggling. They finally, 52,000 years ago, declared peace among themselves. The stuff they did on their world and our world, really just crazy. So when they got themselves straightened out, and over the time, because they were, look, you can be highly spiritually evolved and also go in the wrong direction and use your powers and abilities the wrong way, and their ancestors, their forefathers did. So they did. They learned meditation. They learned the spiritual teaching. As a matter of fact, for a time, Meier also writes a spiritual teaching for them because of his abilities for, who he is and all of that. So they had a mission beginning here on this world, at least 13,500 years ago, with the prophets, starting with Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel. We have the new true teaching of Emmanuel, the Talmud of Emmanuel, mind-boggling. I will talk about that. And then after Emmanuel, Muhammad was a real true prophet with the same teaching. But in all these cases, the teaching got corrupted into religions and false beliefs and things never intended. So this happened because all these previous times, the people couldn't read and write. You had a few people who could control because they could read and write, and they changed the teaching. They changed the truth. Now we have the truth brought once again in the spiritual teaching. We have the electronic age. This can be preserved. The books are being disseminated. I've had people from as far away as Africa write to get the new Talmud Emmanuel for me. This is the book that Meier and an ex-Greek Orthodox priest discovered, I think it was 1963, on the outskirts of Jerusalem in an ancient tomb. It was the tomb of the crucifixion. And the whole story, I mean, I don't know how much you want to hear about that, but finally, the correct English language translation is available. There's a peace meditation CD that I give for free with it. You learn how Emmanuel had 17 female disciples. Not one of them made it into the New Testament.
Well, that's because it's a male-only club.
Yeah. And, a club of great corruption and debauchery, over the centuries and everything. His confidant, not his wife, his confidant was Mary Magdalene. He survived the crucifixion with the help of healers from India. He and his mother and a few others traveled through several countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, etc. He would teach. He'd be thrown out of these countries because he was teaching again the true spiritual teaching, the one we now have today, from Meier, from the Playar and all this stuff. And he settled in India, and his mother died there. I think he was about 48 or so, 45, 48. He married an Indian woman and bore numerous descendants. One son, Joseph, 80 years after the crucifixion, took the true teaching, which had been transcribed by the true scribe, Judas Iscariot, was not the betrayer. Judas Iscariot was. When you start to see how much stuff got manipulated and what the truth is, how Emmanuel did healings, the things that were attributed to him that he never did because they were impossible. You don't raise people that are dead, and you don't walk on water. But you do some pretty good things when you know how to communicate to people. He had a very powerful mind. He was able to help people bring forward their own healing abilities. He was a master herbalist. He worked with herbs and salves and ointments and different things as well. So you learn things about the real life, this man's real life, and what he taught, and how he foretold. Emmanuel foretold not only the coming of Muhammad by name 500 years later, and how he was going to, a false and evil cult would form around him and corrupt the teachings and give the distant descendants of the Israelis no peace until the end of time unless they made a just and conciliatory peace with the distant descendants of the rightful owners of the lands, which the Israelis, Hebrews were not. The Old Testament tells you they were out there stealing lands, burning, raping, pillaging, murdering at the behest of the so-called God Jehovah, who was an extraterrestrial human being with a mission of people who were very negative, it goes on and on.
Oh, wait, along that line, I really wanted to ask you this. So we hear a lot about other extraterrestrials, even our government being in contact, even far back as any of that stuff. Is that all just PSYOP? What is that?
Yes. Here's the thing. There have been, for 22 million years, various races have come, they've gone. Some stayed because their technology failed. Then they either degenerated into primitive tribes or died out, or then started to re-evolve back up. I mean, what's happened over millions of years here is very interesting. But there were tens and hundreds of thousands of years ago, very powerful, very manipulative ETs that came here. One group settled in a base about a mile beneath the Great Pyramid of Egypt. They are alternately known as the Ba'ath, the name of their people, or the Giza intelligences. They were behind virtually every religion on the planet to use it as a mechanism for control, ultimately to create a false second coming, and thereby control all of the people on earth through a religion of their creation. Meier actually was taken by Ascot in 1953 down into that base. They used the technology so they couldn't be seen, and he saw it's all available for free. We've got all the text online, but what happened was the ancestors of those earlier Ba'ath extended themselves all the way into the 20th century, and they would, on a couple occasions, try to kill Meier. using technology they had, and he survived and he got protected. They were removed from the planet in 1978. Now, all of this talk about contracts with the U.S. and evil grays and aliens, no. The grays were simply, what we call the grays, were simply androids that were involved in the crash at Roswell and some other crashes, possibly because there have been about 8 or 9 around the world. Those
Androids controlled by who?
By the beings in the Zeta Reticula star system who were humans, who weren't hostile. These were exploratory craft. So this was a great model on which to build the evil alien that people think is now abducting them and all that. Look, the intelligence agencies and secret military have a lot of high tech available. They did some back engineering, reverse engineering on, crash craft. So they can also possibly create animated beings that'll look like grays or whatever, because the abductions are not done by extraterrestrials. There had been a handful in our history where people were taken mainly for benign examinations and returned, hypnotized. They weren't supposed to remember it and all that. There was a hostile race that once came and took some people. But beyond that, we haven't had that. And
well, I think Enoch might have been a case.
Pardon me?
I think Enoch might have been a case of somebody who might have gotten taken off.
Enoch?
Yeah, Enoch.
Yeah. Well, Enoch was a contactee with the Pleiaren. They weren't hostile. All of those prophets had contacts with the Pleiaren. All of them. Gabriel was with the Pleiaren mission. He's incarnated today as a man named Quetzal. And I mean, this stuff is so rich in information that we think our way through it. All of this stuff with this evil alien abduction, this is created by the intelligence agencies. It's furthered by what I call the UFO CI, the UFO community and industry. This is a big business, largely of dopey disinformation spreading people. And one of the worst organizations for spreading disinformation is MUFON. I happen to like the guy who's the head of it. I was just in an event in Los Angeles where I kind of called him out a little, and then we sat and talked. He's a nice guy, but his organization it's such an enemy of the truth that it was told to Meier in 1953, 16 years before it came into existence, that there would be an organization called MUFON, which would be his biggest adversary. And it's true. They encourage people to chase lights in the sky, chase their tails, and they turn over anything of significance first to the State Department and CIA for vetting. How do I know? Because a regional MUFON director tried to recruit a guy who worked with someone I know, top secret clearances at orbital rocket launch systems down southern part of Arizona. He turned him down, and he reported on what he was told. Yeah, well, we turned that stuff over for all this stuff with MUFON and lights in the sky and people's sightings. This is giving feedback to the Defense Department for their secret military craft. This is 90% or more, really, of what we see is not ET. There's some ET craft because there's some observation that goes on the Earth. But first of all, there's no reason on or off Earth why a highly developed space-traveling extraterrestrial race needs to make agreements with anybody in any government. Why? If you can float through the wall and pick up Uncle Joe and take his oh-so-precious genetics, do you need anybody's agreement to do it? Why would you need to give our insane secret military even more weaponry when you can do what you want to do? So it isn't happening from ETs. And most of what people think are abductions is mass hypnosis, sleep paralysis, or secret military ops. I've got a video up from a guy I met up here. He was a former Army Ranger, and he explained how they do these things where they can go into a neighborhood at night, they can pump gas into a home so that people are put completely out, enter the home, do what they want, implant memories, manipulate things, rearrange the house, whatever. People think aliens have been doing stuff to them. So all these poor people, and I was at this event where people are talking about this stuff as if it's real. I went crazy. It's like, what are you talking about? This is BS. You know, I'm a contactee and I'm clearing things through the reptilians and the Dracos. I clear them through the central sun. We had a guy stand up and talk about that stuff on this panel I was on. I finally said, will you stop the BS? What's going on here? So the most destructive element for most people to get involved with, it's the UFO groups because they're BS. And that includes the disclosure group and exopolitics because they suppress the Meier case. They know it's been offered to all of them. They either ignore it or suppress it actively. And then the conspiratorial stuff that can't get us too far. If we can learn something, fine. But that's why the calling now really is to study this material, how to change your thinking, your feeling, and your actions so you can survive and thrive and interconnect with people all over who are sane and sensible and learning the same things. And that also means that people who don't study this particular spiritual teaching, but who are peace-loving and whatever, can also become part of a network of peaceful people. It doesn't mean weak people. Billy, the Swiss, they're all armed. That's why they haven't had so much trouble in Switzerland. If you watch for free our film, The Silent Revolution of Truth, Billy's pulling one weapon out of another. He's got a gun cabinet. And my partner, Jack, says to him in German, isn't that a bit aggressive? And Billy says, no. And here's my army revolver. You know, it's like, this. People have to understand, this isn't about running out and getting every, army weapon you can for yourself, every assault rifle and all that. This is about balancing yourself so you're not creating victimhood. I had a little bumper sticker, neither victim nor perpetrator be.
Yeah.
You know, it's like these are strong people. The Pleiaren have weapons that they can have a ship with a screen around it where you can see the ship, but it's protected invisibly. If you fire the most powerful weapons we have against it, the screen is designed to simply absorb the energy and feed the energy into the ship. Kaboom. Don't waste your time. And the Pleiaren offered contact to the American government in 1979 to the Carter administration, and they turned it down. So have a nice day. You know, it's like,
how did that diplomatic, if you will, request come to the Carter administration?
Well, I'll tell you, because actually, what happened was Lee and Britt Elders were two of the people who were on the original investigative team. And Lee had his own connections to the CIA and governments and things like that. Okay. So at a certain point, it seemed like Lee wanted to bring the case to the government here for contact. And the Pleiaren and Meier thought of it, and they said, okay, we'll give you a letter, we'll give you, parameters and all of what contact could be. The Pleiaren didn't think it was going to go anywhere with Billy, wanted to see if we could possibly make that bridge, because one of the important things was if the American government and the American people could enter into the kind of contact I'll explain in a moment, there was a chance that instead of blowing up the damn world through this insidious policy that has been here since the beginning of this government, we might be able to mellow out enough and learn how to live in peace. Well, good luck with that. So what happened was there was a letter, and now I know why we didn't get it wasn't all our government's fault. I hate to tell you, but it's true. They wrote a letter saying, here's the parameters. You may not harm or interfere with Mr. Meier. He's our intermediary. When our ships are present, you may not attack us or anything else. And Mr. Carter, you must tell the American people that all of your religions are basically fantasies and lies. You're telling a Baptist and he's supposed to tell the Americans whether it's a no-go? Well, we didn't have that contact, did we? By the way, I'm going to grab this book just so you can see something.
I can only imagine what the look on their face had to be.
Oh, man. He ran as far from that as he possibly could.
They were calling the Catholics in to do an exorcist.
Yeah. Bring in the heavy hitters. It won't help. So we didn't get that. We didn't get the contact. And, they were sour on it anyhow. But I said to Billy, didn't the player know better than today? He says, well, unfortunately, at this time, they were not allowed to look into people too deeply because it would infringe on their free will. And they just took things as, as they appeared pretty much. Okay, here's the president of that country. And some people are saying that they're having contacts with ETs. Once they used their own science to look into it, they said, nobody's having contacts with extraterrestrials. There have been some accidental encounters where people ran into some people who were here from another world, gathering seeds or whatever the heck it was. And, that's it in terms of real contact. Sometimes they would impulse physicians or, creative people, screenwriters, whatever, in order to give them ideas about things. But they didn't, they're not contacting people here and having conversations. There's no need to. If you've got one guy that can tell the truth, that's all. And for his trouble, he's had 23 attempts of his life. So I mentioned to you that the Talmud Emmanuel, show book. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a whopper of a book. And in there, you get all of this information on this man and his family and all the people involved in this and what really happened. Then I give away a free CD, which is the peace meditation CD that, when you saw the peace symbol and all, there's a meditation. Not only are there some people on Earth that do it regularly, but they're showing on the Talmud. There are 3.2 billion extraterrestrials that do a meditation on our behalf, a peace meditation on our behalf. And it is part of what has helped us to not have that war yet, that terminal third or actually fourth world war. So when you look at things like this, and it's all, and that's why there's a UFO there. Gabriel was an extraterrestrial. When we talk about, the singing light in the sky and this and that, that's what was happening. And honestly, if you think about it, even these Pleiaren, for as bright as they may have been and are, meaning may have been at the time, you'd think that they would have figured out that this could go bad if you start having a guy that ends up getting nailed up and then he survives it, and then people are going to start thinking all this stuff, and here you go. So wherever human beings are, things can and will get screwed up, and this is an example of it as well. We know things got screwed up, but we have so much now that people can benefit from and learn. On my blog and my website, I've got people from over 190 countries, around the world that are finding this material. I don't advertise. I don't take out ads and do fancy stuff.
I'll tell you why, Michael, because there is something happening to a portion of our species. I call it an awakening, an awareness, just to the facts that you're talking about. And I think it's growing because people realize that there's something more. I mean, I was raised a Christian. And when you get to the point where you begin to find out that there's inconsistencies in the story, and anyone can do, I tell people this all the time, that if you think that the Bible, which is a collection of great writings, but if you think it's a literal history document, you're really being deceived. It's a great literary document.
It's derived from the Talmud Emmanuel.
Yes, it is.
So you can get the real story in the Talmud. And then, of course, they have to make up their minds for themselves, because this isn't a religion. It's not a cult or a sect. We're not knocking on your door. We're not asking you for donations. You don't, join something. You don't have a secret password or a special decoder ring either. So it's like, yes, you can participate and work with groups that exist, but they're all doing basically the same thing. They're discussing the material.
And the Talmud is very interesting if you study history as well. It's always amazed me how those in power, both with the church and both in secular, how they tried to burn these books by the tens of thousands during the Dark Ages and even at the beginning of the Christian church. And there's a reason why, right?
Yeah, of course. And those that they didn't succeed in burning, they burned a lot, that are in the Vatican Library. They have a
exactly.
Well, I
So-
want to keep